When love mixes with danger, even milk can hide poison. But what if what really kills isn't what's in the glass, but the one who offers it? The car climbed slowly up the stone road leading to the Adams mansion. Fog blanketed the top of the hill like a veil, and the iron gate creaked open with a long, mournful sound, as if it regretted letting someone in. Julia took a deep breath before crossing the archway, the damp scent of earth mingling with the aroma of the vineyard stretching as far as the eye could see. The mansion loomed above her, tall windows, drawn curtains, and a silence so heavy it felt almost funereal. This was where she would work as a nanny for little Sophie, the daughter of Andrew Adams, a well-known businessman and a recent widower. His wife, Claire, had died just a few months earlier in a car accident. When the driver stopped at the entrance, Julia saw a woman standing at the door. Tall, impeccably poised, her blonde hair tied in a perfect bun, her smile as polished as it was cold. "You must be the new nanny," the woman said, without introducing herself. "I'm Victoria Scott, Mr. Adams's fiancée." The word fiancé hung in the thick air of the courtyard. Julia nodded, trying to hide her discomfort. Victoria looked like she had stepped straight out of a luxury magazine, but there was something in her eyes, a glacial, almost metallic gleam. "I hope you're discreet," Victoria continued as she turned toward the house. "Andrew is still recovering, and Sophie, well, she needs stability." Julia stepped into the grand hall, struck by the contrast between wealth and melancholy. The marble floor reflected the faint glow of chandeliers, and the family portraits on the walls seemed to follow her with their gaze. One showed a young woman with a serene expression, cradling a baby in her arms. Even painted, Claire's eyes seemed to plead for something, justice, perhaps, or peace. Emma slept in a white wooden crib, the room decorated in soft shades of pink and lace. Julia approached quietly and brushed her fingers against the baby's tiny hand. A shiver ran through her skin. She felt an inexplicable bond, as if she had known the child from a long-forgotten dream. Over the next few days, Julia devoted herself completely to the baby. She sang softly, prepared bottles, told bedtime stories. Little by little, Emma began to smile again. Andrew, when he appeared, was polite but distant, buried in papers and endless phone calls. His sadness was visible. The weight of something unresolved lingered in his eyes. Victoria, on the other hand, seemed to watch Julia's every move. She corrected small details, changed routines, and made sure everyone remembered that everything in that house now went through her. One morning, Julia overheard her arguing with Andrew in the hallway. "You still keep her things?" Victoria's voice was sharp. "No one can move on while clinging to the past." "Claire was my wife," Andrew replied, his tone firm but weary. "And this house was hers long before it was yours." The sound of shattering glass ended the argument. Julia, frozen behind the door, heard Victoria's footsteps fading away, and then that heavy silence again, the kind that sticks to the air and never truly leaves. That night, while tidying up the kitchen, Julia heard a noise from upstairs. She climbed the steps slowly and saw that Claire's room was open. Inside, the wind tossed the curtains and scattered papers across the floor. On the vanity, the couple's portrait lay face down, the glass cracked. In the hallway, a shadow moved. "Who's there?" Julia asked, her voice trembling. Nothing. Only the distant echo of the clock striking the hour. In the following days, strange things began to repeat. Sophie's crying always worsened after her feedings. Clean clothes appeared stained by mourning. The room sometimes carried a bitter, almost chemical smell. Victoria dismissed it all as stress, saying Julia was imagining things. One afternoon, Julia watched Victoria prepare the baby's bottle. Victoria stirred the milk calmly, but for a brief moment turned her back, and Julia noticed a small transparent vial on the counter. She didn't have time to read the label. When Victoria turned around again, the vial was gone. That night, Julia found Andrew on the balcony, gazing out at the horizon. He held a glass of wine, his expression distant. "Mr. Adams," she began hesitantly. Sophie's been crying a lot. Maybe we should take her to another doctor." Andrew took a long moment to answer. "Victoria said the pediatrician will come tomorrow. Don't worry." Something in his voice was broken, like a man whose will to fight had died along with the woman he loved. Hours later, deep into the night, Sophie's cries jolted Julia awake. She ran to the nursery and felt the baby's burning skin. Red blotches spread across her tiny arms. Panic gripped her. As she tried to prepare another bottle, something felt wrong. The milk smelled too sweet, sickly, almost chemical. She brought the bottle close to her nose and felt it sting. The clock read 2 a.m. The rest of the house slept. Julia stood there, heart pounding. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows and making the curtains sway like ghosts. She looked at Sophie, struggling to breathe, then at the bottle. Something terrible was happening inside that house. And for the first time, Julia knew. The real danger didn't come from outside. It was hiding within the walls of the hilltop mansion. Dawn brought a heavy silence to the mansion. The wind stirred the curtains in Sophie's room, and Julia, exhausted after a sleepless night, watched the baby as she slept. The red blotches had faded a little, but the fever still lingered. With a knot in her chest, she made a decision. She would take Amato the doctor, with or without Victoria's approval. Andrew appeared at the doorway, still half asleep. The weariness in his face betrayed the long hours without rest. "Julia, what happened?" "The fever's back," she said. "I need to take her to the hospital." Before Andrew could answer, Victoria appeared behind him, impeccable as always, dressed in white, her expression a mix of false sweetness and irritation. "There's no need to overreact," she said, taking Emma from Julia's arms. "Babies are like that. One night they cry, the next they sleep like angels." "But she's covered in spots," Julia insisted, "and the local doctor won't be back until next week." Andrew hesitated, torn between the nanny's concern and his fiancé's apparent calm. Finally, he sighed. "All right, we'll take her today." The hospital was small, down in the town at the foot of the hill. The tests were done quickly. The doctor, an older man with gray hair and a calm tone, looked over the results and said, "Everything's normal, no sign of infection. It could just be a reaction to something she ate or drank." Victoria smiled faintly. "Told you it was nothing." Julia stayed quiet, but the knot in her throat tightened. If it was nothing, then why was the baby's body reacting like that? Back at the mansion, routine tried to return to normal. Victoria paraded through the halls, giving orders to the gardener, Joshua, and to the cook, Doris, making sure her authority was felt in every corner. Andrew, more distant than ever, locked himself in his office for hours. Julia, lonelier by the day, began to pay closer attention to everything that surrounded Sophie. She noticed that the baby only got sick after drinking the bottles prepared by Victoria. When Julia made them herself, Emma slept peacefully. It was subtle, but it was consistent. One night, while washing dishes, Julia noticed that one of the bottles left in the sink still had a bit of milk in it. The color was slightly off, barely noticeable, with a faint bluish tint under the kitchen light. Her heart started racing. She lifted the bottle to her nose. That same sweet, chemical smell filled the air. She looked around to make sure she was alone, then slipped the bottle into her purse. She barely slept that night. The next morning, she asked for a day off to take care of personal matters. Victoria raised an eyebrow, suspicious, but agreed. Julia drove to the university where Ethan, an old childhood friend, worked. He was a biochemist, curious, trustworthy, and discreet. Exactly what she needed. In the lab, she handed him the bottle with trembling hands. "I need you to analyze this. It's urgent." Ethan looked surprised. "Is this milk?" "Yes, but I think there's something wrong with it." He didn't ask questions. Hours later, when he called her back into the lab, his expression said everything. "Julia," he began, serious, "this contains dichloroacetate." She frowned. What? Dichloroacetate. It's a toxic compound sometimes used in experimental studies on cellular metabolism. In small doses, it can cause nausea, fever, liver damage. In a child, it could be fatal. The ground seemed to vanish beneath her feet. Someone's trying to kill Sophie. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. You need to be careful. If you're right, whoever's behind this is dangerous. Keep what you found to yourself, but don't confront anyone yet. Julia nodded, eyes brimming with tears. Thank you, Ethan. I'll find out who's doing this. When she returned to the mansion, the air felt thicker, almost suffocating. Victoria greeted her with a smile that was far too sweet to be sincere. Handled your personal matters? She asked, arms crossed. Yes, thank you, Julia replied, forcing a smile. Victoria tilted her head slightly, like someone sniffing out secrets. Good. I was starting to worry about your loyalty. It's hard to trust people who go sneaking around. Julia's blood ran cold. Victoria knew something. Maybe she had searched her room, or maybe she was just testing her limits. In the days that followed, the tests began. Victoria left prepared bottles on the counter, watching from afar to see if Julia would use them. She left empty vials in the pantry, held long stares in the hallway, and made sharp remarks about nannies who get too attached to other people's children. Andrew, increasingly manipulated, began to doubt her. Victoria says you've been tense lately, he told her one evening. If you're overwhelmed, I can find someone to help. Julia swallowed the words she wanted to say. She knew that one wrong move could cost the baby her life. One afternoon, while crossing the garden, she heard voices near the shed. She recognized Victoria's tone. Joshua, she said quietly but firmly. The nanny's getting too curious. You think she's found something out? The gardener asked. Victoria paused. A short, sharp laugh followed. If she has, she'll disappear along with the milk. The chill of the late afternoon seemed to pierce through Julia's body. She stepped back carefully, trying not to make a sound. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared they would hear it. In that moment, she knew the danger was real. This wasn't jealousy or household tension. It was a trap, a deadly one. And she was caught right in the middle of it. The sun had barely risen when Julia realized she couldn't stay silent any longer. The image of the bluish bottle and Ethan's lab results still burned in her mind. Emma slept in her arms, breathing softly, and Julia knew that if she didn't act soon, this might be one of the last mornings she'd see the child alive. When Andrew came downstairs for breakfast, his face drawn, eyes shadowed, she took a deep breath and approached him. Mr. Adams, we need to talk, she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. It's about Sophie's health. He looked up, adjusting his tie. The pediatrician already explained. It's just a phase. It's not that. Her voice trembled. I took a milk sample to a lab. There's a toxic substance in it. Someone's poisoning your daughter. Andrew stared at her for a few seconds, then let out a nervous, disbelieving laugh. That's ridiculous, Julia. Please listen to me. I saw Victoria preparing the bottles and then... The mere mention of Victoria's name made him rise abruptly. Enough, he shouted. You're overstepping your bounds. You're letting Claire's death affect you. I'm not crazy, she cried, tears welling in her eyes. I swear I'm telling the truth. Just then, Victoria appeared at the doorway, composed, elegant, as if she'd been waiting for the perfect moment to walk in. What's going on here? She asked, feigning surprise. Andrew ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. She's saying someone's poisoning Sophie. Victoria placed a hand on her chest, her tone dripping with false concern. Oh my God, Julia, you need some rest. Their eyes met, Victoria's gaze cold and calculating. And in that instant, Julia understood. Victoria wanted her to lose control, to seem unstable. From that morning on, everything changed. The maids began to avoid her. Andrew, once kind, became distant. And Victoria, with her soft voice and feigned sympathy, began weaving a web of traps around her. 2 days later, during breakfast, Victoria suddenly stood up, feigning shock. Andrew, look, she exclaimed, pulling something from her pocket. "This brooch, it's mine. It's been missing for weeks." She looked straight at Julia, smiling with venom. "I found it in her room." The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew frowned, confused. "That's not true," Julia said, panicked. "I never touched your things." "Maybe you got confused," Victoria replied, her tone sickly sweet. "Sometimes, when people are under pressure, they do things without realizing." Andrew took a deep breath, visibly shaken. "Julia, maybe you should take a few days off until this all gets cleared up." The pain hit like a knife. "You're firing me?" "Just suspending you. For now." She tried to argue, but his eyes were distant, defeated. Victoria had won, at least for the moment. That afternoon, as she packed her things, Julia realized she couldn't leave without finding out the truth. Something deep inside pushed her toward it. She remembered the security cameras scattered throughout the mansion. Victoria had ordered them installed to protect the baby, but ironically, they might hold the key to exposing her. She waited until nightfall, when the house was quiet. Grabbing a set of keys from the laundry room, she slipped into the small security room at the back of the mansion. A wall of monitors displayed live feeds from the main rooms. To her surprise, the gardener Joshua was there, adjusting a cable. "Joshua," she whispered, "I need your help." He turned, startled but not unfriendly. "What's wrong, Miss Julia?" "Victoria's doing something to Sophie. I need to see the footage from the past few weeks. Can you help me?" Joshua hesitated, glancing around. After a long moment, he nodded. "All right, but be quick. If Mrs. Victoria finds out, I'm done for." With his help, she accessed the archives. The screens flickered with scenes of daily life. The garden, the living room, the nursery. For long minutes, nothing unusual appeared. Then, in a recording from 3 nights earlier, Julia saw the unthinkable. Victoria, in her robe, standing in the kitchen, swapping bottles and pouring something into a baby medicine vial. "That's it!" Julia gasped, covering her mouth. "She's poisoning the baby!" Panicked, she pulled a flash drive from her pocket and began copying the footage. Her heart pounded violently in her chest, but halfway through the transfer, the screen flickered, the system froze. Julia turned and saw Joshua's expression had changed. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice cold. "I'm taking this to the police," she shouted. "Sophie's life depends on it." He stepped closer, silent, then pressed a key on the console. One by one, the video files began to erase. Julia tried to stop him, but he grabbed her arm. "You should have stayed quiet." With a sudden jerk, she broke free, snatched the flash drive, half the files still intact, and ran to the window. Outside, the night was dark, rain pouring down in sheets. Behind her, Victoria's voice echoed through the corridor, chilling and calm. "Joshua, don't let her leave." Julia didn't think twice. She rushed into the nursery, scooped Emma into her arms, and leapt out the window into the wet grass below. The baby cried, frightened, as Julia wrapped her in a blanket. She ran through the vineyards, rain lashing her face, her feet slipping in the mud. Behind her, dogs began to bark. Inside the mansion, Victoria watched from the window, a satisfied smile curving her lips. She turned as Andrew came running down the stairs, panic in his eyes. "What happened?" he demanded, breathless. Victoria put on the perfect show of fear, hands trembling. "The nanny," she whispered. "She kidnapped our daughter." The rain poured heavily, slicing through the darkness like icy needles. Julia ran down the muddy road with Emma pressed tightly against her chest, the blanket soaked through and the distant sound of sirens echoing down the hill. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. Each flash of lightning illuminated the vineyards stretching to the horizon, and the shadow of the Adams mansion behind her loomed like a stone monster watching her flee. Emma whimpered, trembling. Julia rocked her gently, trying to hide her desperation. "It's okay, my love. I'll protect you. I promise." Her phone vibrated in her pocket. With trembling hands, she pulled it out and saw dozens of messages and missed calls. Victoria's face filled the headlines of local news sites. Nanny kidnaps Adam's baby. A still frame from the security cameras painted a distorted picture of the truth. She knew she couldn't go back, couldn't trust anyone, except for one person. She drove the old car to the other side of town, the wipers struggling against the downpour. With every turn, Victoria's words echoed in her mind. If she found out, she'll disappear along with the milk. When she finally reached Ethan's small house, pounding on the door, he opened it in shock, still wearing a lab coat stained with reagents. "Julia? What happened?" She rushed inside, gasping, clutching the baby. "She's getting worse, Ethan. The fever's back." He didn't ask questions. He just guided her to the kitchen and quickly turned it into a makeshift emergency station with bottles, cotton, and syringes. "She's still intoxicated," he said after examining Sophie. "But I can try to neutralize the effects until we get proper medical help." While he prepared a temporary antidote, Julia peered out the window. The street was empty, but she knew the police would soon track her car. "They're saying you kidnapped Andrew's daughter," Ethan warned, turning on the news. On the TV, her face appeared again under the caption, "Former nanny on the run, suspected of poisoning and kidnapping baby." Julia felt her stomach twist. "She turned everything against me." Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. "Julia, listen. You have to leave the baby here. I can take care of her. They'll go after you, not her." She looked at him, resolute. "No. If I leave her, they'll find her, and Victoria will finish what she started." He tried to argue, but she was already wrapping the baby and preparing the bag. "Then let me help another way," he said. "Record a video, tell everything, send it to someone you trust." Julia hesitated, then nodded. She grabbed her phone, took a deep breath, and started recording. "My name is Julia Mitchell," she said, voice trembling. "I'm being accused of kidnapping Emma Adams, but the truth is different. The child's stepmother, Victoria Scott, has been poisoning her for weeks. I have proof. The lab report and part of the camera footage. Andrew, if you see this, please believe me." When she finished, she sent the video anonymously to Andrew's company email. The clock read nearly 3 a.m. Outside, the sound of tires on wet pavement made Ethan turn off the lights. A black car passed slowly, its headlights sweeping across the window. "They're already looking for you," he whispered. Julia gripped the flash drive and the report tightly. "I'm not stopping now." Ethan walked her to the car. "Take this road," he instructed. "Follow it to the old gas station on Route 9. You can hide there." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for believing in me." He gave a faint smile. The truth doesn't need applause, only courage. The car disappeared down the rain-soaked road, and the storm seemed endless. Inside, Emma had fallen asleep again, pale, her skin cold and clammy. Julia drove with her eyes fixed on the darkness, fighting both fear and exhaustion. With every mile, old memories resurfaced, fragments she once thought were just dreams. A hospital corridor, an empty crib, a woman's scream calling for a child, and the silver glint of a broken necklace. She touched her neck. The small, worn locket swung over her chest. It held half a heart engraved with the initials AC. Since childhood, Julia had carried it, the only trace of her past before the orphanage. The flashes came faster now. An accident, fire, hands being torn apart, and a voice calling her name before fading into nothing. A clap of thunder ripped through the sky, snapping her back to reality. In the rearview mirror, headlights approached fast. "No, it can't be," she whispered. The black car that had passed Ethan's house was now behind her. The distance was closing. Julia pressed the accelerator, the old engine groaning under the rain. Emma began to cry. The asphalt was slick. One of the tires burst with a sharp pop, and the car skidded onto the shoulder. She jumped out, clutching the baby and the flash drive. The road was lined with thick woods, and footsteps approached through the mud. "Thought you could run?" Joshua's cold voice came from the shadows. "You should have stayed quiet." She stepped back, shielding Sophie. "Joshua, you don't have to do this." He hesitated, but fear hardened his eyes. It's too late. Then, the sound of another engine echoed in the distance. Headlights cut through the rain. A silver SUV screeching to a stop. The door flew open and Andrew stepped out, drenched and breathless. "Joshua!" he shouted. "Step away!" The gardener froze, uncertain. Andrew approached Julia, guilt and shock written on his face. "I saw the video," he said, panting. "I believe you now." Julia's legs nearly gave out. For an instant, fear turned into relief. The rain seemed to stop for a single heartbeat, as if the world itself held its breath. Andrew met her gaze, his voice steady but full of pain. "We're getting her out of here, and together, we'll end this." She nodded silently, holding Emma close. For the first time since it all began, she no longer felt alone in the dark. The rain poured heavily, slicing through the darkness like icy needles. Julia ran down the muddy road with Emma pressed tightly against her chest, the blanket soaked through, and the distant sound of sirens echoing down the hill. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. Each flash of lightning illuminated the vineyard stretching to the horizon, and the shadow of the Adams mansion behind her loomed like a stone monster watching her flee. Emma whimpered, trembling. Julia rocked her gently, trying to hide her desperation. "It's okay, my love. I'll protect you. I promise." Her phone vibrated in her pocket. With trembling hands, she pulled it out and saw dozens of messages and missed calls. Victoria's face filled the headlines of local news sites. Nanny kidnaps Adams baby. A still frame from the security cameras painted a distorted picture of the truth. She knew she couldn't go back, couldn't trust anyone, except for one person. She drove the old car to the other side of town, the wipers struggling against the downpour. With every turn, Victoria's words echoed in her mind. If she found out, she'll disappear along with the milk. When she finally reached Ethan's small house pounding on the door, he opened it in shock, still wearing a lab coat stained with reagents. "Julia? What happened?" She rushed inside, gasping, clutching the baby. "She's getting worse, Ethan. The fever's back." He didn't ask questions. He just guided her to the kitchen and quickly turned it into a makeshift emergency station with bottles, cotton, and syringes. "She's still intoxicated," he said after examining Sophie, "but I can try to neutralize the effects until we get proper medical help." While he prepared a temporary antidote, Julia peered out the window. The street was empty, but she knew the police would soon track her car. "They're saying you kidnapped Andrew's daughter," Ethan warned, turning on the news. On the TV, her face appeared again, under the caption, "Former nanny on the run, suspected of poisoning and kidnapping baby." Julia felt her stomach twist. "She turned everything against me." Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. "Julia, listen. You have to leave the baby here. I can take care of her. They'll go after you, not her." She looked at him resolute. "No, if I leave her, they'll find her, and Victoria will finish what she started." He tried to argue, but she was already wrapping the baby and preparing the bag. "Then let me help another way," he said. "Record a video. Tell everything. Send it to someone you trust." Julia hesitated, then nodded. She grabbed her phone, took a deep breath, and started recording. "My name is Julia Mitchell," she said, voice trembling. "I'm being accused of kidnapping Emma Adams, but the truth is different. The child's stepmother, Victoria Scott, has been poisoning her for weeks. I have proof, the lab report and part of the camera footage. Andrew, if you see this, please believe me." When she finished, she sent the video anonymously to Andrew's company email. The clock read nearly 3 a.m. Outside, the sound of tires on wet pavement made Ethan turn off the lights. A black car passed slowly, its headlights sweeping across the window. "They're already looking for you," he whispered. Julia gripped the flash drive and the report tightly. I'm not stopping now. Ethan walked her to the car. Take this road, he instructed. Follow it to the old gas station on Route 9. You can hide there. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you for believing in me. He gave a faint smile. The truth doesn't need applause, only courage. The car disappeared down the rain-soaked road, and the storm seemed endless. Inside, Emma had fallen asleep again, pale, her skin cold and clammy. Julia drove with her eyes fixed on the darkness, fighting both fear and exhaustion. With every mile, old memories resurfaced, fragments she once thought were just dreams. A hospital corridor, an empty crib, a woman's scream calling for a child, and the silver glint of a broken necklace. She touched her neck. The small, worn locket swung over her chest. It held half a heart engraved with the initials AC. Since childhood, Julia had carried it, the only trace of her past before the orphanage. The flashes came faster now, an accident, fire, hands being torn apart, and a voice calling her name before fading into nothing. A clap of thunder ripped through the sky, snapping her back to reality. In the rearview mirror, headlights approached fast. No, it can't be, she whispered. The black car that had passed Ethan's house was now behind her. The distance was closing. Julia pressed the accelerator, the old engine groaning under the rain. Emma began to cry. The asphalt was slick. One of the tires burst with a sharp pop, and the car skidded onto the shoulder. She jumped out, clutching the baby in the flash drive. The road was lined with thick woods, and footsteps approached through the mud. Thought you could run? Joshua's cold voice came from the shadows. You should have stayed quiet. She stepped back, shielding Sophie. Joshua, you don't have to do this. He hesitated, but fear hardened his eyes. It's too late. Then, the sound of another engine echoed in the distance. Headlights cut through the rain. A silver SUV screeching to a stop. The door flew open and Andrew stepped out, drenched and breathless. Joshua, he shouted, step away. The gardener froze, uncertain. Andrew approached Julia, guilt and shock written on his face. I saw the video, he said, panting. I believe you now. Julia's legs nearly gave out. For an instant, fear turned into relief. The rain seemed to stop for a single heartbeat, as if the world itself held its breath. Andrew met her gaze, his voice steady but full of pain. We're getting her out of here, and together we'll end this. She nodded silently, holding Emma close. For the first time since it all began, she no longer felt alone in the dark. The mountain wind howled through the trees, carrying the scent of wet earth and pine. Andrew drove in silence, his eyes fixed on the winding road, while Julia, in the back seat, held Emma wrapped in a blanket. The baby slept deeply, her face still pale, but her breathing steady. After hours of running in fear, the sound of tires on gravel almost felt like a breath of peace. We're almost there, Andrew said hoarsely. A cabin I used to go to with Claire. No one knows about this place. Julia nodded, exhausted. It was still hard to believe he was there, that he had come for her on that stormy night, trusting only a video. When the car stopped in front of the wooden cabin, dawn was already painting the sky gray and lilac. The cabin was simple, surrounded by tall pines, but it gave off a warm, familiar air. Andrew opened the door and lit the fireplace. The crackling flames brought a heat that seemed to restore color to the walls, and to Julia's own soul. She'll be safe here, he said, watching Emmy on the couch. I also brought a medical kit. The hospital's pediatrician owes me a favor. Julia looked at him with gratitude and uncertainty. Why did you believe me? Andrew hesitated before answering. He took out his phone, opened the video she had recorded, and set it on the table. Because I saw the fear in your eyes, and also because I found this. From his coat, he pulled an envelope full of photos and papers. Inside were copies from the mansion's security system, the same footage Julia had tried to save. I asked a tech from the company to make a backup, he explained. Victoria ordered everything deleted, but he kept a copy. Last night, he sent me the files. Julia brought her hand to her mouth. The images showed Victoria switching bottles, tampering with baby formula, and then smiling straight into the camera, as if daring anyone to believe otherwise. Andrew looked away, his expression heavy. I didn't want to see it. I was blinded by grief and guilt. Guilt? She asked softly. I knew Claire suspected Victoria, he admitted. Before she died, she told me her new wife was keeping secrets, but I thought it was jealousy, postpartum anxiety. I ignored her. Silence fell between them. The firelight flickered across Julia's face, revealing not just exhaustion, but a deeper pain, the kind that comes from old wounds being reopened. She stood and walked to a wooden shelf in the corner of the cabin. Boxes sat there, labeled with faded handwriting. Trips, childhood photos, Claire. One box caught her eye. Can I look? She asked. Andrew nodded. Julia lifted the lid. Inside were letters, small notes, and childhood keepsakes. Among them, a golden locket, broken in half. Her heart raced. She reached for the necklace she had worn since childhood, the half she'd always carried, and fit it perfectly into the fragment from the box. The click was soft, almost symbolic. Inside was an old photograph. 2 little girls hugging, with the same smile and the same eyes. On the back, written in childish handwriting, Julia and Claire, sisters forever. Tears came before she could stop them. No, she whispered, clutching the photo. This can't be. Andrew stepped closer, confused. What is it? Her voice broke. I'm her sister Andrew, the one she lost in the orphanage fire. For a moment, time stood still. Andrew looked from Julia to the photo, then to the locket, now whole. The truth fit together before him, both impossible and undeniable. Then, he murmured, stunned, Aimee is your niece. Julia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Memories crashed over her. The fire, the screams, the broken necklace, hands torn apart by flames. What she'd thought were dreams had been memories all along. Andrew held her shoulders gently. Claire looked for you for years. She always said she could feel you were alive. Julia sobbed. And now she's gone. And I found her again only through her daughter. The baby cried then, as if responding to the revelation. Julia picked her up and rocked her tenderly. I promise I'll protect her. For me. For Claire. Andrew watched them, moved. You're not alone, Julia. I'll protect you both. For several quiet minutes, there was only the sound of the wind at the windows and the fire crackling. For the first time in a long while, Julia felt she didn't have to run anymore. But peace was short-lived. A distant light flashed between the trees. Then another. Andrew moved to the window, tense. Headlights, he muttered. Cars coming up the road. Julia joined him, panic in her eyes. How did they find us? Andrew's jaw tightened. Joshua. He's the only one who knew I might come here. The sound of engines grew louder, and soon the barking of dogs shattered the mountain stillness. Julia clutched Amato her chest. What do we do? Andrew looked at her resolute. We stay together, and we fight for the truth. Outside, headlights cut through the fog. Victoria stepped out of one of the cars, sheltered under a dark umbrella, her expression serene and triumphant. 2 police officers stood beside her. Andrew took a deep breath, grabbing the flash drive and the documents from the table. It's time. Outside, Victoria's cold voice echoed through the night. Andrew, darling, open the door. The kidnapper Nanny is in there with you, isn't she? Julia looked at him, and he at her. Neither spoke. They just stared at each other as the wind howled, and the truth at last prepared to be spoken. The sound of sirens cut through the mountain silence. Blue and red lights reflected off the cabin windows, turning the inside into a mosaic of tension. Julia held Emma in her arms while Andrew stood still by the door, the flash drive clenched between his fingers. Outside, Victoria spoke in a theatrically trembling voice. "Officers, she's in there. Please save my daughter. That woman is dangerous." Two policemen approached, guns drawn. The older one knocked on the door. "Mr. Adams, open up. We have a warrant for your arrest." Andrew took a deep breath and turned the knob. The wood creaked. A gust of cold air rushed in. Victoria was the first to step inside, her face painted with fake distress. "Andrew, she's got Sophie. She threatened me," she cried, pointing at Julia, who backed away protectively, clutching the baby. "Don't touch her," Andrew ordered, his tone so firm it made even the officers hesitate. "Before anything else, I want everything recorded." The officer nodded. The body cameras on their vests blinked red, recording. Andrew set the flash drive on the table. "Here's the proof that explains everything." Victoria went pale. "Proof?" He opened his laptop and plugged it in. The footage started playing, Victoria switching baby bottles, mixing liquids, handling medicine containers. Her face, calm, deliberate, almost cold, glowed on the screen. "This is fake!" she screamed. "She's been stalking me! She's insane!" But the look in the officer's eyes had already changed. The younger one turned to his partner. "The date and time match the security logs," he whispered. Victoria stumbled, trying to steady herself. "Andrew, honey, you're not seriously believing this?" He met her eyes with an icy calm. "I believed you for too long, and because of that, Claire died." Her face twisted. "What?" Before she could react, a trembling voice came from the side door. Everyone turned. It was Joshua, the gardener, his eyes wide with fear. I can't lie anymore," he stammered. "She made me do it." He pointed at Victoria, voice breaking. "She's the one who told me to sabotage Mrs. Claire's car. Said it had to look like an accident." The silence that followed was suffocating. "Shut up!" Victoria screamed, trying to lunge forward, but one of the officers restrained her. Joshua broke down crying. "I just needed the money for my sick daughter, but after I saw what she did to the baby, I couldn't take it anymore." Victoria thrashed against their grip, her mask finally falling away. "You're all idiots!" she shouted. "You really thought you could take everything from me?" She shoved one officer aside and bolted for the door, but another caught her outside. On the wet gravel, Victoria Scott was handcuffed, her hair tangled, rain clinging to her face. The look that once held control and calculation was now pure hatred. Julia watched from the doorway, trembling. Andrew stepped close and laid a hand on her shoulder. "It's over." She looked down at Sophie, who for the first time in weeks slept peacefully. Her cheeks were rosy again, her breathing soft. A faint smile curved the baby's lips, and Julia cried, not from fear, but from relief. Months later, the Adams mansion had been sold, and the newspapers closed the story with a simple headline: "Widow convicted for attempted homicide and fraud." Andrew, now away from the company, devoted himself to a new project, one born from the ashes of everything he'd lost. In the courtyard of a renovated old school, a sign gleamed under the sun: Claire Institute, Center for Child and Maternal Protection. Julia walked through the yard, watching the children play. In her arms, Emma, healthy, cheerful, her curly hair shining just like her mother's. Ethan, the biochemist, approached with a folder of reports. "The first shipment of donated medicine just arrived. The Foundation's project is taking off." She smiled. "It's only the beginning." In the office next door, Andrew worked on documents for another initiative, the Blood Ties Foundation, dedicated to supporting orphanages and research on late adoptions. When he saw Julia at the doorway, he stopped writing and smiled, his expression calm, the kind that comes only after a storm. "I never thought the end of everything could turn into the start of something like this," he said. "Claire believed that," Julia replied softly. "That pain gives birth to purpose." She stepped closer to the desk and opened the old blue notebook she always carried. Its pages were worn, filled with scribbles from sleepless nights. Slowly, almost like a prayer, she wrote, "The truth like the milk of life never sours. Sophie, still in her arms, touched the paper with her tiny fingers, smudging the fresh ink. Andrew chuckled. Now it's official. Julia looked out the window, the same golden and violet horizon that once colored the fields where it all began. For a moment, she felt Claire there, in Sophie's laughter, in the warmth of the sunlight, in the scent of new life. And for the first time since the fire, Julia felt that the past had finally turned into forgiveness. If this story touched you, take a deep breath before you leave. Tell me in the comments, do you believe the truth always wins, even when it takes time? Leave a like and subscribe. Every gesture helps keep alive the stories that speak to the heart.